Today on Smoky Mountain Faith Food and Fun, we're making something from Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. Wet bottom shoefly pie. Oh my goodness. We're gonna get started in just a second. Hey everybody, it's Christy. Hope you're having a great day today. Today we are going to make a shoefly pie, a wet bottom shoefly pie. Now, shoefly pie is definitely one of those things a lot of people have never heard of. It is a Pennsylvania Dutch treat. I knew about it from my many visits years ago to Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. And what got me on wanting to make a shoefly pie is actually watching another YouTuber, Jacob the Carpetbagger, who's a really neat guy who goes around the country visiting roadside attractions and reviewing all of these neat places that you can visit. If you haven't checked out Jacob's channel, you definitely should. But he visited a place in Pennsylvania that I am quite familiar with, and I was just kind of shocked and went back to memories of years gone by when he visited Dutch Haven, which is this little Dutch building in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. They sell crafts and jellies and jams, and their specialty is actually shoefly pie. And of my many trips to Pennsylvania years and years ago, I wasn't really a huge fan of shoefly pie. I wasn't a huge fan of molasses. That's going back probably 20 years, but I liked the shoefly pie from Dutch Haven. So I was like, oh gosh, I need some shoefly pie. Well, it's in Pennsylvania, we're in Tennessee, that's a long way away. Well, I actually looked at their website, and you can have a shoefly pie shipped for $39.99, and I'm like, wow, okay. I guess if, I wanted to spend $39.99 on a pie, I would do it, and it would come, and it would be great. And I know that it would be great because it was from the Dutch Haven. But I said, you know what? I am going to try to make it myself. So I've looked up several different recipes and kind of decided what method I thought was the best, and took the best of several recipes and sort of have decided on my own recipe. And so hopefully you guys can help me figure out if this is going to be a good one. Of course, there's no taste division, but I think we'll know once it's done if it's what we're looking for. But this is the wet bottom shoefly pie. Apparently there are two versions. One is a little more cakey. The wet bottom is obviously ooey and gooey, and it's called shoefly pie because when they would make it, sometimes the molasses would bubble up to the top and it would attract the flies, and they'd go shoefly, shoefly, shoefly. So it's just a real basic pie. It's not hard to make. I actually had all the ingredients on hand, even molasses, which is crazy, because I had some in the pantry, and I was like, oh, I've got everything. I have everything you need to make this pie. And so I'm going to go ahead and get started. I've got some boiling water over on the stove, and that's the first step. So I'm going to go ahead over to the stove and get my boiling water. Just give me 1 second. And we're good there. All right. So it's in a bowl. We've got an egg yolk, just one egg yolk separated from the white. And I'm going to take my handy dandy little whisk and whisk that up just a little bit. And then it says to add the molasses, and this is a neat little tool. Sort of, we'll just dump it in there. Sticky, sticky. I spilled a little bit on the counter when I was getting stuff ready, and it probably took me 3 or 4 times to wipe the counter before it didn't feel sticky. It is sticky, sticky. This is the kind of molasses I'm using. Got some molasses on it, but it's a old-timey molasses, biscuit sopping good. but I'm sure you can use any molasses that you can find in your grocery store. I know that Walmart, if you're an online shopper, sometimes like I am, you can just get it online. And but I happen to have this on hand, so we're going to give it a shot. I am just whisking that molasses together with the egg yolk, and it looks pretty good. Now, some recipes will call for an egg, some don't. I would prefer it to not be quite as wet. I want it to set up a little bit. So I decided the egg yolk was a good idea. So we're taking in the boiling water. And I had thought, you know, maybe you'd need to temper the eggs so you don't have scrambled eggs. But none of the recipes seem to call for that. So I am just whipping the hot water into the egg. And the molasses, and boy, does that smell good. You know, when I was a kid, I wasn't a fan of gingerbread, wasn't a fan of molasses or sorghum or any of those dark syrups. But now that I'm older, it feels like I've developed an acquired taste for that. So I'm kind of excited to see what shoefly pie tastes to me now, and if I really am going to love it the way I used to. Okay, I'm cheating. We're going to use a Marie Callender's pre-baked, or not pre-baked, Marie Callender's pie crust. This has been thawing in the fridge because I had them in the freezer, and I said, you know what, they're pretty well as good as a homemade. So I have them. We're going to use them. So here's what we're going to do. All it says is to pour the wet bottom into the pie crust. It doesn't look like it's going to bake. I'm curious to see how that comes out. Alright. I wrote out what I got to do here. Let's see. I've got everything correct. Alright, so again, this is just 3/4 cup of boiling water, 1/2 cup of molasses, and 1 egg yolk, and you beat it together. Super easy. All right, so now we're going to do our dry ingredients. 1 cup of unbleached flour, just all-purpose. 1/2 cup of light brown sugar, and we've got 1/8 tablespoon of the following: cloves, ground ginger, and ground nutmeg. And then we have 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon. I use cordiente. I'm not sure if that's how you say it, cordiente cinnamon. It just seems to really have a much better flavor for me. And then there's 2 tablespoons of butter, room temperature. You want that room temperature because you're gonna wanna make a crumble out of this. So I'm gonna take my little, again, I don't remember what this thing is called, but it's good if you're incorporating doughs or crumbles or anything like that. So I'm gonna go ahead and whisk around my dries before getting my butter put up in there. And then the recipe says to use your fingers, or several recipes have said that, but I'm going to go ahead with this method because I feel like, and you just use your fingers to get that butter broke up in there to make a crumb. And it sure does smell good. I'm excited about this pie. I've never made one, so this is a maiden voyage for me, but it smells right, smells good. So for, I guess, probably around $7 to $8, I'm making the shoefly pie that I could have paid $40 for. So I think that we're going to get a better bargain here. If I ever make it back up to the Dutch Haven, you can better believe I'll be buying a pie because it's just good. I hope that this one can compare. I really do. Have you ever had shoefly pie? Do you know about shoefly pie? Some of the little bit of a song that I'm going to have that's playing in the background as I'm doing this is called shoefly pie and apple pan dowdy. It's from the 1940s, I believe. Dinah Shore is the singer. I'm an old soul, so when I heard the song, I was like, oh, I love that. That's awesome. So I really just thought it would be fun to incorporate that into this video a little bit. But now I'm going to have to figure out what is an apple pan dowdy and maybe make that. And, you know, apple desserts. That's something I never was a fan of much when I was younger. And now that I'm in my 40s, somehow I just am into that so much more. Well, this certainly does look a lot like the crumb that is on the pie that I'm trying to replicate. So I'm happy. So I think what happens is that part of this crumb topping sinks into the pie and makes a bit of a cakey layer, and then you've got the crumb on top, and then on the bottom, you know, I guess the molasses mixture kind of just is ooey and gooey. So hopefully that bakes up the way we want it to. If not, you'll be with me with a disaster, and we can learn together. But yeah, we always have something we can learn from each other. All right, I think that's good. So I got my pie, and gosh, it seems so watery. I hope it works out. We're gonna give it a shot. This is the first time thing for me. Oh, maybe it's right. Maybe just some of it sinks down and settles, and then some stays on the top. It'll be neat to see if the molasses bubbles through the top, so we can say shoefly. We've been in the 90s here in Tennessee, which is pretty hot because we've got a lot of humidity. And so I'm not heating up the oven. As you've seen in other videos, I am a toaster oven kind of cook. Alright, I think that looks about how it should. Trying to seal up the edges a little bit with the powder. I don't know if that's going to matter. But previous pie experience says to try to do that. Alright. We are gonna put this in the oven on 425 for 10 minutes. I'm sorry, 400 for 20 minutes. And then lower it to 325 for another 40 minutes, and then it should be done. And I will check back in with you when we're about halfway through to see how it's doing. And you can be with me on this little bit of a shoefly pie experiment. And we will be back with you in a few minutes. I sure wish that there was such a thing as smell-o-vision, because my house smells right now like all kinds of yumminess, and it reminds me of walking into Dutch Haven because it's exactly what it smells like. So I'm hopeful that this is going to be a yummy pie. Okay, with the magic of video editing and television, the shoefly pie is done. Here we go. Okay, so now it's time for confessions of a YouTube chef. Are you ready for this? So I admittedly followed part of a recipe and didn't follow part of a recipe, but actually the part of the recipe I followed kind of failed. I followed the measurements for the crumb topping from a certain recipe, and well, about 10 minutes into cooking time, I noticed that the crumb was kind of falling in to the shoefly pie, which that's normal. There's normally like a little bit of a cakey layer that the crumb forms when you have shoefly pie. And I realized that that's not nearly enough crumb topping, y'all. It's just not nearly enough. So I whipped up another half of a measurement of the crumb topping, and I will update the recipe in the comment section. And now we actually do have a crumb topping. So this was a test. I have not made this kind of pie before, so you guys are kind of my guinea pigs, and my husband is a guinea pig over there. But can I just say that the smell of this house, and even this many years later, this many hours later, you can still smell this pie. It smells so sweet and yummy and cinnamony and everything you think about when you think home. Like, I need to make a candle that smells like this pie because it smells that good, literally. All right, so we're gonna cut into it. I'm a little nervous to see. I am not good at cutting pies either, so wish me some luck on this. Paula Dean had put a tip out there once that you should cut, if you're using a disposable pie pan, you can cut the sides, but this is actually doing okay. So I'm gonna cut half. I'm not cutting everything. It's kind of dense. Gosh, I hope it's good. Had to make a special trip to the store for whipped cream because what is shoefly pie without whipped cream? All right, there we go. Cut a small slice. All right, it feels sticky. It feels set up. And okay, first slice is never really very pretty, so we're gonna hope that it is. All right, here we go. How's it gonna come out? I'm anxious. Okay, hang on. Not quite cut there. Oh gosh, it smells so good. Okay. Ooh. That looks yummy. Let me see, I have to see it. Okay, there it is. Alright. We are gonna see what happens here. Let's put some whipped cream on there. And I didn't get a fork with the way it smells. Oh. Okay. So that is everything delicious. It just, initially when you take a bite, it seems like it's a little, I don't want to say bland, but then once it starts working its way through your mouth on your palate, all of those homey and delicious flavors start coming through, and it's like, oh yeah, one more. I gotta do one more. Oh, yeah, the whipped cream orange. Just see the dogs looking at me. It's hilarious. They're all like, "Do we get some?" Oh my goodness. That's very, very good. And there you have it, guys. I think my only other thing that I critique is the fact that it's not as wet a bottom as I thought it would be. But it's set up very nicely. And I'm not sure what the difference is as far as it staying wet versus being a little more, I wouldn't call it dry either. But it has a nice consistency and it's very delicious. So I definitely recommend that you try this pie. Shoefly pie. And I would definitely, what I was going to say, I lost my train of thought. That happens. Yeah, here I go. This is live TV, people, or live YouTube. Anyway, it is a very easy pie to make. It's really not a lot of work, especially if you do like a store-bought crust. This is the Marie Callender's. It's delicious. But I literally had everything on hand, and a lot of people don't have molasses, but that's an easy thing to pick up. But I love it. It takes me back to being at Dutch Haven, and I saved $32 by making my own for $8. So I'm happy, definitely happy. I would ask you guys to please subscribe to our channel if you like what we have coming. We went somewhere today and filmed a video that we know the people that are visiting Pigeon Forge, Gatlinburg, and Sevierville and the Smoky Mountains are going to absolutely love.